Didn't realize that people would be concerned. I kept saying over and over and over again that I have a lot of faith in the good people of our community, that they will ask respectful questions of the candidate. I know from personal experience, putting yourself forward to be a candidate is a lot of hard work. People take their politics very personally, and you can get really emotional, but I know when I come to see these folks up here that it takes a great deal of courage to put yourself forward for public office. I'm not concerned that people are going to be disrespectful. Andrew is going to explain the rules, but they are going to be questions about policy, no personal attacks on the candidates or their parties or their leaders, just to ask respectful questions, and we'll have a nice conversation and really get to know our candidates tonight. And I'm going to say again that I think we have an amazing community here, and that people are respectful. So you will see one empty seat, and that was a candidate who didn't like the format and at the last minute decided not to come. He has posted that he received threats specific to this event, but when he tried still late this afternoon to get us to change the format, he mentioned nothing about those hostile messages or threats pertaining to the event. But let's not let that spoil the evening, because we have some amazing candidates up here, and I know we all have some questions. And I'm going to turn it over. We've hired a professional moderator for the night, Andrew Welch. We're really, really lucky to have his expertise, and he'll explain what we're going to do. I will tell you, we will have a bowl at the end of the evening if anyone wants to throw in toonies, because we're all nonprofit organizations, and the cost of renting the room and other expenses, anything would be appreciated. And I just want to say one last thing about Dimitro Bazmat. He's this amazing young man, and he ran for school trustee during the election, and he's now started a nonprofit organization called Youth Activists Inc., and they have taken over running Shay's Place, running youth programming in our community. And don't we have some amazing people in the community? I'll turn it over to Andrew's capable hands, and I look forward to a really respectful and fun evening. Thanks. Oh, yeah.
There you are.
Why are you doing that?
There you are. All right. Thank you very much, Cheryl. I'm sort of semi-dressed as town crier of the town of Caledon, which is one of my official roles at council appointment. And always people seem to show just a tad more respect for somebody in uniform, so we'll go that route. Shouldn't be a problem tonight, though. Good evening, and thank you for coming out to this all candidates meeting. hosted jointly by the Caledon Village Association, the Palgrave Residents Association, and Youth Activists Incorporated, all fine organizations. Again, my name is Andrew Welch. I'm going to be your moderator for the evening. The washrooms are right out the door, and immediately you can't miss them as soon as you head out there. If you need that, look after yourselves. The Dufferin-Caledon riding candidates from the 5 major parties were invited to this town hall. Unfortunately, as mentioned, there was a misunderstanding apparently around the format details that were sent out to the candidates this weekend, and at 5 p.m. Pat Seaback of the Conservative Party reluctantly made the decision to withdraw his participation. That being said, let's first meet the candidates in their own 2-minute introductions, and then I will review the format for the rest of the meeting. So by random draw, we're going to begin with Michelle Fisher of the Liberal Party of Canada.
I feel like I should do a little dance. Okay, is that?
We'll solve this somehow. There you go.
Okay. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you. It's really wonderful to be here tonight, and thank you to Kate Dimitro and to Cheryl for organizing us all. On Saturday, I was at the Liberal rally at the International Centre. I was with fellow MPs and about 2,000 supporters, and it wasn't until we were on our way home that I heard the news that Prime Minister Trudeau actually had to wear a bulletproof vest, that he showed up to do this rally to speak with everybody, even though there had been a credible threat to his life. And a few things struck me about that. But the one that I want to emphasize here today is that he showed up even though somebody had threatened, I believe, to shoot him. And that means there's something about him and his strength, and the fact that he believed so much in his vision for the country that he would risk his life to give that message to his supporters so we could come out energized for the last week. And I believe in his vision for the country as well. There are 3 things that I would like to tell you about me for why I'm running. The first is that I care a lot. I care about every single person I meet. I care about the families in our riding. I care about the seniors and the single people in our riding. I care about businesses, and I care about working with our municipalities and the provincial MPP so that we can bring opportunity to Dufferin-Caledon. The second is that politics matters. It's not just people nattering on the television screen every night. Every single decision that is made at the political level hits us on an individual level, whether we realize it or not. And the third thing is that I would really, really love to see a progressive voice standing up for the people of Dufferin-Caledon. It's 2019, and I don't want to paraphrase the Prime Minister of 2015, but it is definitely time.
My name is Chad Ransom, and I represent the People's Party of Canada for Dufferin-Caledon. It looks like I'm going to be the only person up here representing the right side of the aisle today, and that's a privilege I'm willing to take on, because I don't run from anything. I'm willing to handle any issue, and I believe that we should all be debating on the issues that are at hand. Let me tell you what sets us apart from the other parties. Number one, we do not believe that Canadians need an unelected panel dictating the policies that this country should run by. This is why my party does not want to chase a UN seat on the Security Council. Number two, we want to lower immigration, and I'm prepared to talk about that tonight. What we want to do is put it in line with other G7 countries. As it stands with the current rate that is predicted, we will be 4 times more than France, 3 times more than Germany, and twice the Britain. What I'm looking to do is lower that immigration to fall in line with the other G7 countries. Number 3, I'm the only party that's saying that we're going to balance the budget within 2 years. Some of these other parties up here, they're going to promise you everything. They're going to tell you that they're going to spend all of your money. I'm of the belief that you should be paying off your credit card before you promise your kids to take them to Disneyland. That's what I'm looking to do. I'm looking to put the house back in order and balance the budget.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Allison Brown. Just before I get started, though, if you see me reading, it's just that I want to ensure that everything that I've written down gets to your ears. So I first want to acknowledge that we're on the land of First Nations people who were here before and are currently here. Bonsoir tout le monde. Je m'appelle Allison Brown. Good evening, everyone. My name is Allison Brown. I want to thank my family and friends and my amazing team, the NDP back office, staff, and Elections Canada. A very big thanks to the people of Dufferin-Caledon, who, when I asked for your consent to give the NDP a voice in Dufferin-Caledon, you resoundingly said yes. I also want to acknowledge the other candidates here tonight who have also put their names forward to represent Dufferin-Caledon, and to thank you all for your efforts. The pulchritude of Dufferin-Caledon encompasses the Oak Ridges Moraine, the Niagara Escarpment, the expansive rolling hills, and the generosity of the people of this great riding, and it's captured my heart. I am running for 3 reasons. 1, I'm a nurse, and I've had the privilege of caring for many people in my lifetime. To me, this is a gift of service, and I would now like to serve Dufferin-Caledon by being a strong voice in Ottawa for the people of this great riding. I will voice your concerns and work hard to find a solution to the challenges we face. 2, to my parents. My parents are immigrants to this country of ours, and I have sacrificed much. I say thank you for what you've done, and I appreciate your sacrifices. Your sacrifices have not gone unnoticed. I'm running for every person that has sacrificed something for someone else to do better. And third, I am running to fight for the issues that are important to Dufferin-Caledon and the NDP. Issues like affordability, climate change, healthcare, and the economy. I'm in this for you. Yes.
Good evening, everyone. A few months ago, as we were all mentally getting ready for an election, I was elated, the Green Party was elated to find out that according to opinion polls, the climate crisis has become the #1 issue for the upcoming election. Weeks later, as we get really close to election, all the old line parties have cobbled together some climate plans which are completely inadequate to reach our goals we need to reach by 2030. So don't be betrayed by promises if climate change is your #1 issue. However, speaking with many of you in our riding, I find that the economy is equally important. And people question, is the Green Party fiscally responsible? All this climate mess, all this fight against the crisis, is that not too costly? Will we keep our jobs? The answer is absolutely yes. On the contrary, only a transition into a clean economy helps us to secure our jobs and our prosperity for the 21st century. We need a modern economy, look forward, not in the rearview mirror, and seeing how can we fix the oil when new technologies are there that need to be deployed. We need a corridor to shift electricity. We need to insulate houses. We need more people in services, nursing older people. We are getting older. That's achievement of technology and medicine. We have to move away from industrialized agriculture. That will take a lot of effort, create a lot of jobs. Think of vertical farming in cities. There are so many ideas that will actually propel our economy forward. My second hope is that you share that dream with myself and the Green Party and help us to bring Canada forward as the #1 admired leadership nation in the whole world.
Switch into town crier mode. Go into my phone. I apologize for the technical challenges we've had. All right. So as advertised, the format selected by the 3 sponsoring organizations for tonight's town hall gathering will be mostly questions from the audience. I will be posing the first question to all 4 candidates, and then we will turn to the microphone, which is right there at the end of the aisle. If you have a question, you're asked to stand in line behind that microphone as we go. So every one of the candidates, writing candidates, have signed the Better Ballot Pledge. You can get more information about that back there. Given tonight's format, I thought it would be relevant to know that as a pledge, it's basically one that says they're going to focus on the issues, never attack persons and so on, never attack organizations or anyone based on any inappropriate criteria. Having seen all these candidates in action a number of times on this campaign, I'd like to point out that they have all very much lived up to those values and demonstrated the utmost respect for each other. So with that in mind, I wanted to share with you the specific guidelines that we're going to be using for the questions tonight. It's also posted on the microphone there. It's posted on the orange pieces of paper at the back of the room, and it pretty much reads this way. Please respect our format. You are being given the opportunity to ask a question. Speeches will not be tolerated. If you have not started your question after an introductory sentence, you will be asked to cut immediately to your question or to return to your seat. I think that's reasonable. Please respect our purpose. We are not here to learn your opinion on any issue. We are here to learn those of the candidates. Please do not preface your question with your own take on party platforms. Ask the candidates for their opinion. That's what we want to know. Please respect our candidates. Personal attacks directed to anyone on stage or to the party leaders will not be tolerated, as they violate the 2 previous guidelines. Anyone engaged in that behavior will be asked to return to their seat and will forfeit their question opportunity. And please respect our time. All questions must be relevant to the jurisdiction of the federal government. Please do not ask about provincial or municipal issues. Questions must be clear and concise. We strongly recommend that you cruise over to that table and write your question down on one of the pieces of paper ahead of time so you can just read it off when you come up there. And finally, please respect our audience. Each member of the audience is limited to 1 question, and once the response begins, you're asked to return to your seat from the microphone. Back and forth conversations with the candidates is not permitted by tonight's format. Again, these guidelines are posted around the room if you want to check. Candidates will have a maximum of 2 minutes to respond to any question, and that will be reflected on the countdown clock that they have in front of them. This was the contentious point, but I think we'll go ahead with it. While most questions should be directed to all candidates, you may choose to direct your question to a specific candidate if that is particularly relevant. However, as moderator, I reserve the right to rephrase it and open that up to the others as I think it appropriate. If during their response a candidate references another candidate or another party, I reserve the right to give that other candidate, if they are present, 30 seconds to respond to the comment that was made. All right, and at the end of our microphone section, each candidate will be given 3 minutes to make closing remarks. So, before we proceed, Running for federal office is a major commitment, especially for those who are new to politics. And having such quality individuals willing to give back to their community and country says a whole lot. I suggest we recognize that right now. There is more to the job of Member of Parliament than voting in the House of Commons and working for your constituents in a particular riding. It is also an opportunity to contribute on committees and champion specific causes through private members' bills. For example, our outgoing MP was long active on the Citizenship and Immigration Committee and also successfully introduced legislation mandating stricter sentences for those who deface war memorials. Our opening question then for all candidates is as follows. If you are elected to federal office, and we'll be beginning the chat, if you are elected to federal office, apart from your work associated with representing this particular riding, what committees do you hope to sit on, and or what causes do you intend to personally champion? In other words, what will be your greatest Member of Parliament passion? 2 minutes to chat.
I said it from the beginning, and I'll say it now. I'm here to be a voice for special needs. Right now, there is no help for special needs on the federal level. My personal policy that I wanted to develop would increase the disability credit for children up to $6,000, for adults up to $12,000. There's something out there called an RDSP. A lot of people don't know about this. It's been around for a very, very long time, where the government will actually match up to 300% of whatever you donate. A lot of Canadians don't know that this is out there in order to help them out. What I would be looking to do is allow a transfer of that disability tax credit into an RDSP, which the government should match. This is going to help children and families who are dealing with special needs tackle the challenges they hit whenever these kids hit 21. As soon as our children are out of the school system, there's absolutely no help whatsoever. It is totally reliant on the provincial government in order to help out these kids, and there's nothing coming from the federal government. That is going to be my passion. I've said it from the beginning. I challenge every single candidate up here to bring it to Ottawa, and that's going to be my choice and stand.
Thank you. Party of Canada, now over to Alison Brown, the NDP. What would be your championed topic?
Thank you, Andrew. So since we all signed the Better Ballot Pledge, I would champion a private member's bill to bring the Better Ballot Pledge to Ottawa. I would champion the rights of women and girls across the nation as well as around the world. Seniors, I would also champion or be honored to sit on any committee that will encourage or build a national senior strategy as well as a national dementia strategy. Our veterans, I would also be most honored to sit on a committee that recognizes the work of our veterans and also the lack of support that they're receiving at the federal level. And finally, I would be most honored to sit on any Indigenous committee to support the water, non-well water policies. I would be most honored to do that. Thank you.
Stefan Beeson of the Green Party of Canada, what committees do you hope to sit on, and or what causes do you intend to personally champion?
What do you think? You're all wrong. I would not be on environmental committee because I'm not a climate scientist. We need to have experts on committees. One thing we have in governments, that ministers are hopping portfolios all the time. All of a sudden, if you look after housing, you're an expert in law the next day. I believe we need a more science-based form of government, where real experts on committees who do not do political bickering, people who know the issues and can discuss them properly for the sake and benefit of everyone in government and the population at large. I'm tempted to say economy. Just as an introduction of myself, I have studied business administration, economics, and banking. I'm a business owner, so I could potentially have a word when it comes to economic affairs. However, my true passion would be for foreign affairs. My wife Pia, sitting right here in front row, and I, we live in 4 countries. I speak 4 languages, and I believe, and now it ties back to green, that thanks to the climate crisis, once this, and forbid it will not happen, transitions into climate catastrophe, the ramifications for the whole world will be incredible. We will have mass migration, people fleeing the climate crisis, people in low-lying lands will flee to other continents even. So we have to address that issue. We have issues of peace. You saw now Turkey invading, fighting the Kurds. It's so much complexity in foreign affairs that, and I circle back to the end of my introduction, I would like to help Canada to be a leader in peacekeeping, a leader in good examples, and overall be the most admired country in the world and help to make the whole world a better place.
Michelle Fisher of the Liberal Party of Canada, what's your greatest Member of Parliament passion?
I would like to see Canada become a #1 world leader in clean technology and green energy innovation. I think this is the single biggest opportunity for our country, in addition to being our single biggest need for climate change action. And I know that the Liberal Party has said that they're going to be setting up a committee with economists, with scientists, with experts, to take a look at how we're going to get to net zero emissions by 2050. They're going to be putting in place 5-year legally binding milestones, and I would love to be part of that committee. Unlike Stefan, I don't think you need to be an expert to be a political attaché to a committee. You need to be committed, you need to be motivated, you need to buy into the vision, and you need to be able to develop the relationships to make it happen. And that's what I would like to do the most. I also have a real keen interest in democratic institutions. I know that electoral reform was something that was on the table and then taken off the table disappointingly in the last term. I have already let it be known to somebody in the Prime Minister's office that I would like to take another crack personally at some kind of electoral reform so that every vote counts in our democracy. I fully support what the Liberals are doing in terms of revising the Senate. I find it very frustrating when it becomes a parking space for political cronyism and when there are blocks to legislation. And so I really support it continuing to become more merit-based and independent and autonomous. Thank you.
So now the microphone in the middle of the aisle is yours. If anyone has a question for candidates, if it's a question for all candidates, we'll begin with Alison. Go ahead.
When we moved up here 23 years ago, we were told that there would be a GO service to Bolton, but train service. And now they're talking about cutting the bus service to Bolton. I'm just wondering what you have planned for our community as far as that. Public transit.
Okay, so the question then would be, as much as possible, federal government involvement in transport. What would be your party's position on that, mass transit and so on? Alison, we can start with you.
Sorry, ma'am, what was your name?
Oh, Sharon O'Brien.
Cheryl. Hi, Cheryl, good evening.
Sharon.
Sharon, sorry, thank you for the question. So again, when we look at transportation, it's more of a municipal issue. However, the NDP party, our position is on ensuring that those living in the rural north, rural areas, will have transportation, and the service that was deleted from the Greyhound service will be reinstated. Thank you.
Then we just move on down the line.
Well, I was speaking about these clean tech jobs and jobs transitioning us into the 21st century. Clearly, the construction of more public transportation, high-tech transportation. I mean, has anybody been in Europe and has been on a French TGV, or one of these fast trains they do everywhere? They now have them in China. I'm speaking about leadership. China is no longer producing the cheap stuff. China is producing high-tech, wonderful products that are also environmentally friendly. Heads off to China, while we are lagging behind with this. So clearly, the Green Party stands 100% by financing more public transport.
Our riding continues to grow with all sorts of new developments, so I find it ironic and distressing that at this time when we have more population and more people going into Brampton, Mississauga, and Toronto for their jobs, that we're actually facing cuts to the GO train service and to the GO bus service that help us. We need to be expanding the service. Now I know transportation is largely a provincial matter, but when I take a look at plans to, for instance, build new highways, people will say, well, we don't have the funding to fix the bridges, to build, you know, an LRT, or to have a high-speed train service to the city. These highways, for instance, the 413, the projections are that it's going to cost between $2 to $4 billion, not even including appropriating the land. So with that money, why couldn't we soup up our rail service? Why couldn't we have something that's built for the future? I think getting all those cars and trucks off the road is going to help reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And in addition, it helps our quality of life because we're not spending so much time on the road. Thank you.
Unlike some other politicians, I'm not about to make a promise that does not fall under my jurisdiction. What we do have to do is communicate with municipalities. Unlike some of the other parties that are up here right now that are having a hard time communicating with the Premier of Ontario or the Premier of Alberta, it's all about communication from the top down, right? So what I am looking to do is listen to what the constituents want, talk to the municipal leaders, and see what I can do. But at the end of the day, this is a municipal jurisdiction, and I shouldn't stand up here and promise you something that is out of my control.
Alison had a good idea, actually. If you could state your name, that would be great. When you just, I asked you the question. Go ahead. Your question. Yep, you
Liz Shaughnessy. My question is for all the candidates, and it's something that's been fundamentally bothering me through this entire election campaign, and that is the economy, aka a healthy economy. None of the platforms that I've read, watched, seen, Googled have said, they've said a lot about promises, financial promises, but they haven't given me a vision of what the economy is facing going into the next decade. And we all know that our two biggest trading partners are having a shootout at World Corral. We have an aging demographic.
So your question would be?
What is your economy platform? What is your platform for the economy?
Thank you.
Well, I don't want to be a broken record in this great question. It is... One, two, three, chest. Oh, that always works. So, clearly the transformation into a clean tech economy. Let me give you a few examples. East-west power grid. So we have enormous amount of hydroelectric power in Quebec, but it's not being used in Canada to its full extent because there's simply no power lines going east-west. So we suppose, let's build these power lines. There will be a lot of work, a lot of investment. Next, the building envelope is one of the worst emitters of greenhouse gases in a way that we need way too much energy to heat our buildings. So clearly, to have a program that fosters the insulation of buildings will not only create jobs, it will also be localized jobs here. And we are also saving money as citizens because we spend less money to heat. And again, we do something good for the environment. So these are two examples I have. We can also invest more in, what did I have here? Yes, in aging population. Right? I was actually at the time at home today, and I wanted to mention that. The aging population as demographic, it's a fact. So we need better education. We need to have more programs at our colleges and universities that are geared towards our demographic changes. So that's very important. Again, that is good for the economy. That will create jobs. Moving away from the agriculture, I have this as one bullet point here. That's an investment. There's this vertical agriculture you can have in cities. It will reduce carbon emissions because it's very, very gentle. It doesn't need fertilizers. It will increase health. Again, we have the technology with University of Guelph, so we can invest more in academia to propel us forward into a better, sustainable agriculture, which again will create jobs and be good for the economy.
Thank you, Stefan. About the economic plan from the Liberal Party of Canada.
There are a few things that we have on our platform that we're going to be doing. The first is going to be continuing to invest.
All right, now. Okay, so I guess I want to start by saying that right now our economy is going really well. When I go door to door, I talk to some people, and I think they've taken in this idea that we're doing poorly. Our economy is actually growing every year. Since 2015, it has been in growth mode. We have stimulated the creation of jobs, more than 1.1 million jobs across the country, and our unemployment is at the lowest it's been in 40 years, and we created another 54,000 jobs in September. So that's the good news. Of course, we want to keep it going. There are three things that we're going to be doing. One is that we're going to continue to invest in the middle class. We're giving a new tax rate to the middle class so that the first $15,000 of income is going to be free, not included in your income tax calculation. We have increased the Canada Child Benefit. It's helped pull people out of poverty, it's given them money to spend, and that's helped them create jobs as well in the country. We're also going to be helping to transition to a clean tech economy. That's going to be a major part of the platform. And among the many things that we're doing is we're going to stimulate innovation in companies who want to manufacture or distribute clean technology products and services by cutting their corporate tax rates in half. This is for both small business and for large business. And finally, one of the biggest deterrents to our growth, to our economic growth, is finding skilled trades workers when and where we need them. So in terms of transitioning to a clean tech economy, we're going to be investing a lot of money into helping workers currently in the oil and gas sector transition to clean energy jobs. And we're also piloting some innovative programs, like one where employers in rural areas, on farms, and in northern areas get the bureaucratic red tape cut, and they can bring over skilled tradespeople from different countries to help them build their business and keep it growing. Thank you.
So I never once heard of anybody spending themselves in the vault. What we need to do first is balance the budget. A lot of people don't think that the budget can be balanced within 2 years. I'm going to give credit to a left-wing individual named Jean Chrétien. Whenever in 1995 to 1997, he was faced with a $40 billion deficit, if you put it into today's standards. Within 2 years, he was able to balance that budget and get a $4 billion surplus. How are we going to do that? We're looking to cut foreign aid, which is going to bring in close to $5 billion. We want to cut out the CBC. That cost is $1 billion towards the Canadian taxpayer. What we're also looking to do is get rid of corporate welfare. Corporate welfare costs Canadians anywhere between $5 to $10 billion every single year. Just cutting out these things alone, we're sitting with currently close to a $23 to a $25 billion deficit. It is very, very easy to get out of. We just don't have to spend our way out of it. Once we are out of it, we are going to be lowering the tax rate. You're going to be getting 0% up to $15,000. Once you're over $15,000, you're going to be sitting at around the 15%, and anything over $100,000, you're going to be sitting at 25%. The biggest thing we're also looking to do is do a zero capital gains tax. Money is back into the pockets of Canadians. We are not going to spend our way out of it. I think it's been proven that the budget's not going to balance itself.
Thank you, Liz, for your question. People are working harder. Sorry.
I keep on
Just It's okay. Thank you, Liz, for your question. People are working harder than ever, but feel like it's impossible to get ahead. And it's not just about money in your pocket, the long hours, having to work multiple jobs, high stress, and health problems are becoming more common. We'll create 300,000 jobs and tackle climate change by, the 300,000 jobs will be created through retrofitting existing homes so that they meet the climate standards. Small business tax rate will stay at the 2010 levels of 9%, and I've spoken on to small business owners on my canvassing, while I was canvassing, and they said to me that 9% was working for them. And we'll invest in people. So our national pharmacare we need a healthy human resources, or people in our community are the most valuable resource that a country can have. So we're going to invest in pharmacare to ensure that everybody's healthy and able to drive the economy. Thank you.
Leave it on.
Yeah, absolutely. One more note that just occurred to me. There is no shame if your topic comes up in a question earlier to slip out of the line. That's perfectly acceptable. So that we can have as many topics introduced as possible. Sir, you can start with your name.
My name is Wayne Noble. The question is regarding active transportation. Most people will tell you Quebec is 20 years ahead of the rest of the country when it comes to cycling infrastructure. My question, each one is a two-part question. What will you do to improve active transportation as a whole? And what is one project that you will look after for this one ride?
Thank you, Wayne. Starting with Michelle from the Liberal Party of Canada, active transportation.
By active transportation, Wayne, you mean cycling, walking, hiking, anything that isn't in a car?
Definition of active transportation, is not using border.
Okay, got it. So for the most part, that is going to be under the purview of the municipal government. What I would do is I would work with the municipalities to help get them infrastructure money that they need to build paths, bicycle paths, whatever kind of transportation they would like through the towns, and I guess connecting towns to make it safe so that we can get out and get active and find other ways to go places we want to go.
Again, it might show that I'm not a polished politician, or I might be a little bit different, because I'm not about to promise you guys something that I'm not able to bring to fruition. A lot of politicians want to promise you stuff over and over and over again. I'm not looking to buy your votes. I'm looking to earn them. And that's not my jurisdiction, so you're going to have to bring that up with your man, and I apologize.
Thank you, Wayne, for your question. I've read through our policy, and specifically in regards to active transportation, I can't see anything in our policy, but certainly I can take your question and send it back to our back office, and I can get back to you in at least 2 days. Is that okay? Yeah?
Thank you very much, Alison, for your segue to policy. This is a policy. That is Vision Green. It has been started in 2006. That's your complete manual for modern economy. When it comes to active transportation, you'll find a chapter in it. But I would like to answer with a personal experience. Clearly, it's partially a provincial or municipal issue. But the other day, I was canvassing in Shelburne. I looked at Shelburne. Shelburne, hopefully nobody here is from Shelburne and feels insulted, but Shelburne is an example of a failure. There's so much usable land inside downtown Shelburne where you could build some low-rise housing, call it 6, 7, 8 stories, where people then eventually can walk to their supermarket, where eventually people can go to these charming cafes on that dying Main Street, where we can have a bypass that could be federally funded to get all the trucks out of Shelburne. Basically, we have to see the bigger picture first, make our communities, especially our small rural communities, more livable, and let people live inside communities rather than building subdivisions all around. That doesn't seem to be making any sense while the inside is dying. So it needs a big picture approach of better development, and that will automatically lead to opportunities for more cycling and for more walking.
Well, if everyone had an opportunity to answer the question, then I think that probably wouldn't be necessary. Yeah. It would only be necessary if it was directed to a particular person and there was you didn't have an opportunity earlier to speak. Was that the way you understood it?
Yeah.
Michelle.
Well, because I got to answer first, and I would like to say something.
It's a long line.
I would say I will make that available if it was a more federal question. We'll proceed on that basis. So let's move on from that particular question. Again, I'd like to remind people to try and focus your question on federal issues, because these are people running for member of parliament. I understand, but as much as possible, federal issues.
But infrastructure funding, that is something under the...
Exactly, and that's how you answered it. Yes, okay. Sir, you can begin with your name.
Hugh Rodovich. The federal government has lots of responsibilities, whether it's from transfer payments to the provinces to support our unlimited demand for health care, or supporting our military so we meet our NATO obligations, and a variety of things in between. Although Mr. Ranson has already addressed this, but I'd like to know from each one of the other candidates whether you believe balancing the budget is important. If the answer is no, you can give your time to the others. If it is yes, when will you balance it? And third, how will you balance it? And I'll obviously allow the moderator, because Mr. Ranson already addressed some of the how he's going to do it.
It's up to you.
I think I've demonstrated very early off whenever I said about my private policy. I'm somebody you can hold accountable. I tell you what I'm going to do, and I tell you how I'm going to do it, and that's the way that I conduct my politics, and that's the way I'll follow through with it.
Certainly, take your time. Green Party, in our election platform, we want to balance the budget in no more than 5 years. How are we going to do this? Because obviously, all candidates have lots of promises. We want to invest a lot in fighting the climate change. So where should the money come from? So we feel, and I was talking about last century's systems we are using to solve the problems of the present and the future, so is our taxation system. Our taxation system was not overhauled for at least half a century. So it certainly does not fit the bill anymore. Wealth has dramatically shifted. We are always talking about the middle class, which we want to help. It has completely shifted. The middle class is shrinking when it comes to dollar terms, not to number of people terms. So we clearly need to find money for people, A, who do not pay taxes. Can you remember the scandal we had with the Panama Papers? Billions of dollars, and you still find it on Revenue Canada's website today, of uncollected taxes, of tax shelters. So we have to collect this money. Number two, we have to increase tax rates on financial transactions, for instance, of which only very, very few benefit from. And when we are talking capital gains tax, we are not talking about your home. It's about financial speculative transactions that need to be taxed. All in all, if you look at all these measures, including the tax for large corporations, imposing a tax on international corporations, job for all of you tonight, check your Netflix bill, no GST, because our last century taxation system gives us no tools to tax a multinational corporations. So Netflix, Google, they all pay no taxes here. So all in all, our plan calls for $250 billion, and that's vetted by the Parliamentary Budget Office, that they be collected from people who pay too little or no tax.
The question was, will you balance the budget? And the second part was when.
It's in 5 years.
No, that's fine. I'm just clarifying for us.
Okay, thank you for the question. So, I've read our policy, and there's nothing that says that the budget will be balanced. When, like we say, when Parliament convenes and, where we hold the government, minority government, what have you, he's got to look at the books. We don't know what the books are, whether they're balanced or what at this point. So without that knowledge, I can't even begin to say to you, sir, that we would have a balanced budget, because we don't know what the budget looks like right now. However, some key facts that you should know, that some Canadian corporations transferred more than $1.6 trillion to tax havens and avoided $25 billion or more in taxes in 2018. What we would do as the NDP is to get rid of tax loopholes for the richest and big corporations, ensuring that the ultra-rich and corporations pay their fair share, and getting tough on tax evasion and tax avoidance. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice. And finally, Michelle Fisher of the Liberal Party of Canada. Would you balance the budget, and if so, when?
The most important thing to the Liberal Party is to keep our economy going strong, to keep jobs, good jobs being created, quality jobs, and to make sure that our debt to GDP ratio is low, that is, that our debt is manageable. Right now, we have the lowest debt to GDP ratio amongst the G7 countries. If you think the American economy is going well, their debt to GDP ratio is way above ours. In fact, people in the G7 country nations take a look at Canada and think that we're a good example of how things can be done, because we are still investing in Canadians and in the social programs that we have. When Chad talks about balancing the budget in 2 years, that's only through serious cutbacks. And those are cutbacks that are going to be layered on top of the cuts that you're already seeing in Ontario. Cuts to our education, cuts to our health care, cuts that when I go door to door, I'm hearing are your #1 concern. We can't afford right now to have cuts on top of cuts. We need to have at least one level of government, and this is the federal level of government, still continuing to invest in our economy and keep it strong.
Questions, sir?
Hi there, my name is Anthony Zambito, and my question is this. What do you guys have to say to the groups of people who work to compel, censor, and intimidate Canadians from their constitutional rights to freedom of thought, freedom of expression, and freedom of association?
Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony, for your question. Our position is that we will honor or fight for the rights of all people, we will uphold the dignity of all persons under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So that's the position as far as our party goes.
Anthony, I couldn't help noticing you had a PPC t-shirt on. You answered your own question. Your party has some very, very extreme views which would be critical in some countries to be allowed to voice. Canada is a fantastic democracy where very, very extreme views can be voiced openly and freely. So this is fantastic. The Green Party will protect these rights of all people, of all parties, within the realm of our Constitution.
Anthony, can you give me some examples of what you're talking about?
Moderator, is that okay?
Sure, if she asks for it.
Sure. So earlier this month, Antifa thought it'd be a good idea to make their presence known in front of a PPC rally that happened in Hamilton. They thought it was a good idea to wear masks, intimidate people from entering the facility.
Okay, so it was the Antifa example that are you familiar with that?
Yep.
Okay. There was a BBC rally that some people decided to block people from going in.
Oh, okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, I believe that the Charter of Human Rights and Freedoms and freedom of speech need to be upheld at all times. The only limit I would see to that is when it crosses over into hate speech. Somebody trying to block your rally is to me, clearly wrong and in opposition to that. And I agree with Stefan that the fact that you're here and able to ask your questions, nobody's booing you, nobody's trying to shut you down, is an example that we all here believe in that kind of freedom of speech, as long as it falls within the Charter of Human Rights and Freedoms.
The PPC party, the People's Party of Canada, we're probably one of the biggest promoters of free speech. In today's society, we watch comments being stricken from the records based on nothing more than an insult towards somebody else. That's not something that should be happening, especially in our parliament. We need open debates. But I would like to touch on the cuts that the PPC would be doing. Just to answer Michelle, who we would be cutting are the Liberal Friends. Like $12 million to Loblaws, with no corporate welfare. That's the real cut.
Okay. Your question, sir.
My name is Gino Pizzaro. This question is directed towards the NDP, Allison. Jamie went on record that he would support a Liberal coalition. Does that mean that you think just Trudeau and the Liberals have done a good job and deserve another term of power?
Thank you, Gino.
Okay, Gino?
Yes.
Thank you for your question. So, I'm here as a regular person. The only difference between me and you right now is that I'm on this side of the table. So whatever Mr. Singh has decided, he's made that decision. I consider myself MP in training, so I don't know, am I answering your question, or
I don't know.
Okay, could you ask me again, just a bit louder?
The question is, if Mr. Singh was to support the Liberal Party, is that a tacit vote of approval for what the Liberal Party is to do?
Oh, okay, so is it a tacit approval? Again, I can't go into someone's mind and figure out what they're saying, but I do believe that any government that forms, whether a minority government, we have to work together for the people of our country. It doesn't mean it's a tacit approval, sir. It just means that when it comes down to it, we have to work together for the people of Canada.
It was just to the NDP. I mean, I would give you 1 minute if you felt that you really had to respond to that, but I think it was really something about the Chinese Singh's approach to the Liberal Party, so I'm not sure that you have much to add to that.
Well, what I have to add is that we are getting close to the election, and there's more and more smoke coming. When was the last coalition government in Canada? I had a discussion with a lady called Elizabeth earlier on tonight. That's not a form how we govern this country. But people bring up these terms of coalition government, strategic voting, all these obscure things that take away from the real issues. So my pledge is really do vote for the party, the candidate, the platform that matches your beliefs, your worldview, and that's the only way to roll poverty.
I think most definitely Jagmeet Singh's assertion that he would form a coalition government with the Liberals is his way of saying that he believes that he could work with the Liberals and that he generally supports the Liberal direction. Not to say that there is no difference between the Liberals and NDPs, but he would not be offering it up if he didn't mean it. For instance, he did not offer the same thing to the Conservative Party.
I'm out there to make a change. I'm not interested in a coalition. I don't raise my head until the race is over. I'm watching parties make deals, and the election hasn't even finished yet. That's not the definition of a winner. A winner goes in and fights till the end until the bell rings. As you can tell, with being the only right-minded individual up here today, one thing that I've been taught in my life is held high, head is held high, shoulders back, and you finish where you start. And that's what I'm here to do.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jenny LaForeste, and I'm a resident of Caledon. My question is for all the candidates who are here tonight. Many parts of Southern Ontario and BC have faced drought conditions in recent years, yet Nestle, a giant bottled water company, continues to pump millions of liters of water from watersheds in Wellington County, right here in Ontario. So my question is, what is your plan, in detail, with a timeline, to address water taking from big corporations like Nestle, while taking care of our own citizens who continue to suffer without clean drinking water? Thank you.
Thank you.
It's Jane?
Jenny.
Jenny. Okay, Jenny, thank you so much for the question. You know what, can I take the question back to the my back office staff? I'm not prepared to answer this particular question because I don't feel that I have enough information on it. Yes.
Well, I'm very familiar with the issue relating to Nestle. My business is located in Guelph, and I am the former chairman of the Guelph Chamber of Commerce. And Nestle came to us, the Chamber of Commerce, saying, can you lobby for us vis-a-vis the town council of Guelph? That was a tough conflict we had to do. We have to represent business. It was a very, very tough situation. Clearly, these multinational corporations who come here and take our resources, they're not adding actually any value to anything. Right? They're selling their water cheaper. What is it at Costco? $2 for 24 bottles. That's ridiculous. What I see here is that we have to go to the root of the problem. Why are people still drinking bottled water? So I'm more for a market-based solution like you may find it in many European countries. Make a deposit of whatever, 50 cents, $1, you name it, on a water bottle. You can see quickly how people will reduce the consumption of water bottles. There's these wonderful, we all have our bottles here on the table. We need to change the mind of the consumers. We have to change with our own people. That's where the Green Party wants to start. It's a principled organization. We have this people component on our platform and say, you know what, this doesn't make any sense to bottle water and then phase out of it, and we rather protect our water. And companies like Nestle are not the only threat to our water systems. Right? It's the right of corporations or businesses to discharge wasted water in our rivers and lakes. It's not allowed, but they can pay a fee, a fine, and they can continue doing so. That makes no sense. We don't have the political willpower to attack these issues. And I stand here as the Green Party has no allegiance to anybody. We have only the willpower to fix these issues.
Like you, I'm appalled when we're in drought conditions and the water companies keep pumping water and selling them at reduced rates through grocery stores, through Costco, through Home Hardware, through everywhere. What can be done about it? And I even Stefan, as part of the Chamber of Commerce in Club, it seems like nothing could be done, right, at the local level, and yet the companies are making deals with the municipalities, isn't that correct? Okay. So on a federal level, I'm not sure that we could really step in and tell the municipalities that they can't deal with corporations on their own terms with their own water resources. I don't know that that's in the purview of a federal jurisdiction. But I will say that as consumers, we can all stop buying bottled water, and that will make a big dent. You know, we can dictate with our pocketbooks whether it's going to be lucrative for companies to do this or not. The other thing that I would leave you with is that the Liberals plan to ban single-use plastics as early as 2021, and that's going to make a serious difference for companies like Nestle, who will no longer be able to use plastic for their bottles.
So if you check out the People's Party's climate platform, because we actually do have one, and it just going to show if you guys have actually looked at our platform or not. What we are looking to do is protect our lands, protect our waterways. Whenever it actually comes to aquifers, I've got to double check whose jurisdiction that will fall under, but waterways do fall under federal jurisdiction. This is why whenever you guys go get a boat, you can't just go to Service Ontario and get an ownership for a boat. It actually falls under federal jurisdiction. Well, how we would do that is actually protect our waterways, making sure that corporations could not get into it. I'm not going to sit here and tell you guys what to drink. I'm not going to tell you what to eat. That's your own business, and I think government should stay out of my home.
Next question.
Hi, my name is Laura Campbell. I have a question for all of you this evening, and I know Michelle already spoke to it earlier, but it's really important because Canadians are very divided. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that they don't feel represented, in particular when you have majority government after majority government. So all of you have good ideas that constituents like. How can we work towards convincing Canadians to adopt a better voting system if a referendum has to happen, one that was promised to us in 2015, and thank you, Michelle, for acknowledging this earlier. We know that our current system really disincentivizes people to participate in our democracy, so much so that some folks don't even show up for local. The question is, that's right, it's on electoral reform. Thank you.
Starting with Stefan.
We are married for 36 years, and it was under a severe test because Pia voted Liberal at the last election. And the single biggest reason was electoral reform. That was her reason that Trudeau made that promise. And it was not only Trudeau, it was the party congress of the Liberal Party. And I personally know the sponsor of that resolution. It passed with great majority. Because, again, the pollsters were telling the Liberals, whoa, we might not have a majority, so let's do something to draw more voters to us and make us more attractive as a party. What happened? They got a majority, and poof, these wonderful plans for more democracy have completely vanished. And the argument goes, right, that it's not a good system, it's failing everywhere. Not a single party, all of the parties on the table use first past the post for their own internal elections. It's a bad system, and again, I'm talking, looking backwards, that's how it used to be in House of Commons, in whatever, in the 15th century. That is a system that no longer represents the needs of a modern society. So we are not talking about democracy, we are talking about the two major parties happy to keep power and ping-pong the ball, blue, red, blue, red, and not allowing fresh ideas to be properly represented. That is not proper democracy, and there is no reason to implement a proper form of representation as soon as possible.
Something about first past the post. It's a popular system. People like it, people get it, people understand it. So whenever there is a referendum on proportional representation, it inevitably gets voted down in favor of sticking with the system that we have right now. And this is unfortunate. So they've had 3 referendums in British Columbia, and part of it is because people don't get what's going to happen if we move to proportional representation. It's kept a little bit confusing, it's kept a little bit vague. So you get an option, do you want the system that you know you've grown up with and you understand? Or would you like some form of proportional representation? If the latter, then why don't you pick from these 3 options, details to be sorted out later. And understandably, people don't vote for change. It's tough for people to change in the first place. I think proportional representation is largely a marketing problem. I think that if we got, first of all, if we decided which form of proportional representation we'd like to get behind, then we could develop something, I don't know, like a video game or organizational games, get people to interact with it, see how it would work, see how it stacks up against the current system that we have. And then we would have a decent shot at having a national referendum that would vote in favor of electoral reform. And I think that needs to happen first.
So this is a personal policy. My party does not have a policy whenever it comes to reform in the electoral process. But from talking to people between Dufferin and Caledon, there's been a huge difference. Right now the people of Caledon are voting, and the needs down here are very, very different than what they are up in Shelburne. This riding has grown tremendously. And I've watched it grow because I've lived here my whole entire life, and I started my family over there on South Hill. There's a big difference between the 2 sections, but yet you guys have to vote on one person that has to represent you. So you got all the farmers up north, right? And their policies might be a little bit different than what you want down here, when you're closer to the city. I do think some sort of reform has to be done, and I think this riding is a prime example.
Thank you, Laura, for your question. I remember I voted 5 years ago, was it? Or last election? 4 years ago. And I voted wholeheartedly. I wanted our democratic system to change. So as a member of our community, I wanted my voice heard in Ottawa. And when it didn't happen, it really shocked me. So 39% of the vote shouldn't get 100% of the power. We support proportional representation that increases voter turnout and encourages more diversity in Parliament. It also gives voters a local voice that knows its community's needs, exactly what Chad was saying. So honestly, if you want change to happen, give the NDP a chance, and we support proportional representation. Thank you.
Next question will be starting with Michelle.
Hi, my name is Stacey Roberts, and the main concern for me, especially living out in this countryside, so close to the country, is there a federal policy on getting rid of chemicals on our food supplies that are being sprayed on our golf courses and our farm vegetation, our vegetables across this country? And will that be something that will be on the radar of our federal leaders?
Thank you, Stacey.
I'll be frank with you, I don't know the answer to that, but I can find out and get back to you afterwards.
So like Michelle, my party does not have a policy on that, but feel free to go onto my personal Facebook site. One of my favorite animals that are right there right now are the bees and our pollinators. I do feel these are animals that get neglected whenever people are talking about certain entities and the directions that companies need to go in. Again, the people of the candidates with the People's Party of Canada We do love the environment, and we're looking to protect it. We're just normal people like you. That's it.
Thank you, Stacy, for your question. It's critically important to protect Canadians from harmful chemicals. We'll reform the Canadian Environmental Protection Act to make sure Canadians are safe. The point of the environmental protection law is to prevent harm to the environment and people. If it's not doing one of those things, we've got to strengthen it. It's true that our laws and regulations aren't keeping pace with changes in the industry. The law hasn't been significantly updated since 1999, despite being reviewed every 5 years. Canadians are still widely exposed to harmful substances like BPA in countless consumer products like water bottles and cans. We'll act together. We'll act to better protect Canadians from toxic substances in everyday products by strengthening the Canadian Environmental Protection Act and other legislation. We'll also reduce the exposure to substances common in plastic products by banning single-use plastics. Thank you.
Yeah, we already talked about agriculture. We are actually fostering this type of agriculture, that monoculture, these huge land masses that go just for single use, and it's only be kept alive with lots of chemicals, herbicides, and pesticides. This type of agriculture has to stop. So we have to come to way more sustainable practices which do not require this amount of chemicals to be sprayed in our land and eventually land in our bodies. So the Green Party has some very specific ideas to that issue. For instance, when it comes to a toxic substance, it is the government has to prove that it is toxic. Let's reverse the burden of proof of a chemical company to prove this is not toxic. It will be much more violent. And that's another example of the political willpower which the old line parties just has not been there, because it's too cozy, too wonderful, we need all these corporations to look after our welfare. That system has failed. That can no longer be tolerated. So we can ban all toxic ingredients in personal care products, as an example. Wildlife is dramatically suffering from these toxins. So why not make it a point in our criminal code when you contribute to the extinction of species? Species are becoming extinct in the whole world at a very alarming rate. And it's just a gentleman's delict. Sorry for all the ladies, but I can use the men here properly because we are the worst offenders here. So it is just a cavalier delict to extinct a species. It needs to become a criminal act. And then we clearly have tools in our hands to stop this extinction of species.
Hi, Dimitri Obazna, Youth Activist Inc. One of the biggest issues facing young people these days is deaths due to overdoses, something that happens all over Canada and most recently in Orangeville a few weeks ago. What will your government do to curb the opioid crisis?
So again, this would be a personal opinion of mine. My party does not have any jurisdiction whenever it comes to the provincial pharmacare. But I am a big believer in CBD. I watch a lot of people out there that get diagnosed with a certain ailment, that the first thing they do is prescribe an opioid. I think it's prescribed too quickly. This is one of the reasons why I'm kind of scared of pharmacare, because I don't know whose palm's going to get greased at the end of the day. I've watched CBD help out with anxiety, mental illness, with depression. I've also watched it save my dad, right? He was diagnosed with cancer. First thing they did was give him opioids, and his body didn't know what to fight. Next, the morphine made him constipated, and next thing you know, you're taking another medicine to fight that. A lot of addiction starts from our medical system. It's from people people, normal people being prescribed opioids, and then they get hooked on it. The Percocets, everything. So I do believe we have to take a look at some alternative medicine, and just prescribing opioids right off the bat is not the way to do it.
Allison, NDP, opioid crisis.
Thank you for your question. So being a nurse, I've been, a nurse for a very long time, and have seen the effects of people who have, taken opioids, and it's very, very difficult to sort of wean people off of the medication. Our party, we do have a position on what we're going to do. So in terms of we want to have a farm care program across the country. And I mean, as Chad said, in terms of whose palms are going to get grease, I don't know. But I'm looking at it from a positive side that, we will have a robust plan in terms of people being able to access medication, especially our seniors that are on fixed incomes, people on disability. If you're a sole business owner and let's say your spouse is working part-time, your medication's not covered. We also want to look at the holistic person and move towards vision care, dental care. So we have to work together with the provinces and the municipalities to ensure that the funds are there to create those safe spaces, to create those opportunities where we can provide services for people who are, say, overprescribed medications. We also have a plan to look at legally going after these big pharma companies that are, selling their medication to physicians and then having them prescribe them to our regular people in the community and having them hooked on it and the lasting effects of that. So that's our position. Thank you.
Thank you, Alison. Now, Stefan, Green Party.
Well, a little while ago I said I don't want to sound all the time like a broken record. Now I'm really proud that I sound like a broken record. I have been saying several times over and over again that we are using the tools from the last millennium to attack the problems of today and the future. One such tool is the so-called war on drugs. Has it worked? Today, more people die in opioid crisis than in car accidents. How can we have let this happen? So the Green Party, forward-looking, has a solution on the table, which is called decriminalize all drugs. I'm not saying legalizing all drugs, so please be careful before you cite me on social media tomorrow. Decriminalizing it. Because if someone has an overdose, you want to make sure that the friend is calling the police and not being afraid of being arrested, but rather caring for saving this friend's life. So this seems radical, but it is working in many other countries of the world, notably Portugal. And the other day I met a lady on the campaign trail who lost 2 sons to the opioid crisis. It is really heartbreaking. We need to be more decisive. We have to have a clear plan to help everybody. It's not a choice of people, it's a mental health issue. We have to go to the root of the problem.
The opioid crisis, and especially the fentanyl crisis, is absolutely devastating. My sister is a public health nurse in Vancouver's Dufferin-Caledon side, and a couple of years ago I went to visit her at where she worked, at one of the safe injection sites, and she said to me, by the way, it's check day, so it's going to be a little crazy around here. And what I saw in that 2-block radius around where she worked was like nothing I had seen before. It was like a war zone for people who were addicted to drugs. There were sirens going off every few minutes. I said to my sister, is there a 5-alarm fire somewhere? And she said, no, they're just responding to ODs. That's how serious it is. In Dufferin-Caledon, as Chad was mentioning, we've had some deaths recently. I personally have a friend, she doesn't live here, she lives just outside Scarborough. She lost her son, he was out with friends, smoking some pot that had been laced with fentanyl and died. I've been in contact with another person in our riding who had a stepdaughter with a mental health condition. She valiantly struggled against the depression and then ultimately succumbed and overdosed. There are a few things that we need to do. The first is that there's a lack of treatment facilities on the ground for people who are addicted to drugs, and we need to fund those facilities so people can get the help they need sooner. The Liberal government, as part of our platform, we're going to do a national mental health access strategy across the country so that levels of access to mental health services will be defined for every area. And after that, of course, funding will follow. And the final thing, I think, is that we need to get tougher on dealers and manufacturers of fentanyl, especially obviously I mean the illegal kind. And we need to do all of those three things to save lives.
I guess we'll have time for 2 more questions before the closing remarks, so just looks about perfect. Go ahead.
Hi, Elizabeth Stark-Quintek. My question is, Canada seems to be chasing international trade agreements with a lot of different countries, and yet as we've seen recently, the course of these relationships can be unpredictable. We've seen that with the U.S. and we've seen that with China most recently. And so I'm wondering, in order to protect ourselves somewhat from this unpredictability, what will your party do to encourage or increase domestic trade?
Thank you very much. Increasing domestic trade, starting with Alison. New Democratic Party, please.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth, for the question. We will increase our supply chain management in Canada. So, I mean, we would increase our supply chain management. Thank you.
Stefan, Green Party of Canada.
Yes. That only is a very tricky question for somebody who wants to be in foreign affairs. Let's face it, I'm clearly in favor of nations trading with each other. There has to be some fairness in that trade, right? We cannot exploit children in the making of t-shirts as an example. However, when it comes to trading within Canada, we have these, and Chad, I'm taking this away from you, I'm really sorry. We have still in 2019 inter-provincial trade barriers. That is ridiculous. Again, that's where the old line parties are missing out on having clear principles. You have to have a clear principle saying, we are one country, we all deal with each other. We have in some provinces a shortage of nurses, for instance. A nurse from another province cannot start a job here in Ontario tomorrow. So it's insane that we have these trade barriers within our own country, and that costs us billions of dollars in lost efficiencies and other measures that simply do not make sense. Again, here's the political willpower. You see BC and Alberta having a war over oil and wine. That is that bickering which I'm complaining. We need to fix the system, and then we have a much better country.
Canada increase domestic trade.
It's complicated. I agree with what Stefan said, but my understanding is that it's easier said than done. And I think, Stefan, that if you got up there and tried to negotiate with the provinces and get this through, you'd find out how complex it is. We have negotiated trade deals with all G7 countries. We're the only G7 nation to do that. And yet, that has been easier than trying to get the provinces to take down their barriers to trade. A couple of the things that we're doing, we're going to set up a Canada Free Trade Tribunal to hear, investigate, and help resolve cases where domestic trade barriers may exist. And in terms of professionals across the country, we want to streamline things for them so that there is a mutual recognition of standards. So that if somebody's a nurse in Ontario, they can go be a nurse in BC, doctor, lawyer, all that kind of thing. So those are two of the initiatives that we're going to work on. When we were at the Spirit Tree Cidery, the owner asked Bill Morneau, can we do something about these trade barriers between provinces, because it would really very much help their Caledon-based business. And I know that the Liberal government has been trying very hard, and it just is very complicated when you get to certain provinces that want to protect their goods. It's not impossible, but it's a work in progress.
Okay, is that a personal policy or is that a green policy? Yeah, that's it, in the green. So, I'd imagine that, the PPC and the Greens getting along on the subject. The People's Party of Canada does not think it's complicated at all. It's a constitutional right for the goods and services to flow freely throughout the country. So we will enact the Constitution to make sure that that happens. We're the federal government. The tail does not wag the dog. What we're looking at. So what we are looking to do is get rid of those interprovincial barriers to help out with the domestic trade. I was very surprised to find out that I'll watch something be built in New Brunswick, and it's a lot cheaper for it to go down to the U.S., and then it's just resold to Canada up in BC at a premium to a different country. That's not right. Another thing that we'll be looking to do, which is a little bit different than everyone else up here, is we're looking to renegotiate the equalization payments. The equalization payment should have been renegotiated. It's normally renegotiated every 5 years. It was not this time. The provinces weren't brought to the table, so you have places like Alberta that's still paying, even though they might be facing recession, and then you got places like Quebec that's still continuing to take the money. We don't need welfare states. We need to promote these provinces to manufacture goods to make it cheaper for Canadians. Thank you.
Starting with Stefan.
Cheryl Connors. So my question is, in the last 2 years, youth vaping, 16 to 19-year-olds, has increased a staggering 74% to 14.6% of that population. At the same time, smoking tobacco has increased 45%, from 10.7 to 15.5%, so that youth smoking rates now are the same as the adult population. At the same time, smoking overall has increased 2 percentage points, which is the reversal of a downward 50-year trend in smoking rates in this country. I asked this question today because today is the 18-year anniversary of my mother's death from lung cancer and the 26-year anniversary of my father's death from throat cancer. And my question is, I have to say that, what changes will you and your party make to the National Tobacco Control Strategy to prevent another whole generation of becoming addicted to tobacco and die?
Okay, so National Tobacco Control Strategy and vaping, and it's starting off with Stefan.
And smoking.
Yes. It goes back probably to deeper root issues of who is smoking and why are people smoking. It's a much bigger issue than just having an addiction to a cigarette. You also need to look at making rational, science-based decisions. And you mentioned vaping. We shall not have a panic about the situation. There were people dying from vaping because the fluid they used was illicit fluid bought illegally somewhere around the corner, and that's what got people in trouble. So if we had better regulation, vaping can be a good tool to weed people down on their nicotine intake. I'm using that as another example how we should not panic, but use science and studies and proper control to help us to get rid of the smoking addiction. We can also think of potential increase in more taxes on tobacco. That is one other option, but overall, it is something that we need to consult with scientists to find a solution, because politics alone can't solve the issue.
Thank you. National Tobacco Control Strategy and vaping.
No, it's a good question. I know that the Liberals brought in some regulations against vaping in the last year, and they left the door open for regulating it even more. In terms of the tobacco strategy, I think that our country has done so many things. I mean, people buy a cigarette package and has the most gruesome image on it. It seems that some people like to smoke. I'd be really interested, Cheryl, in having a chat with you about some of your ideas on what you would think would be effective. I guess there's always the possibility of an outright ban, although I hesitate to ban legal products from people who might be enjoying them. But if they're destroying health, that might be something that we need to look at.
So our party does not have a policy on that, and I don't think too many parties do. Whenever it comes to smoking, it's going to come down to education, right, which falls underneath the provincial jurisdiction. We're not looking to do a ban, and the reason why we're not looking to do a ban is because we don't want governments in our home. It's just one of those things. It's not up to us to dictate if you guys take something that is legal or that is not legal. Everyone knows what smoking does to you. The education, especially since I've been a kid, they used to have smoking in kids' movies. We probably all watched a Bugs Bunny or a Disney movie that's watched somebody smoke. Society has changed tremendously, and I do think, without trying to sound like a little bit of a Green Party, but it's the power of the people that's going to change the situation on the smoking. It's not a government. Governments cannot tell you how to act or what to do.
Thank you, Cheryl, for your question. First of all, I want to just extend my sympathies if you lost your parents. Yeah, it's really tough. As Chad did say, I have gone through our policy and have tried to come here this evening to share the policy and platform as best as I can. I cannot find anything specific to smoking or vaping, so I can definitely take that to the back office and get back to you.
All right. I can only guarantee time for one more question, but we'll see how the candidates play it out. Go ahead, sir.
My name is John Rudder, and I want to change focus here for a moment. And to facilitate that change in focus, I want to borrow a line from our national anthem. True North, strong and free. We are talking about a piece of Canada that is warming at 3 times the global rate. Within the next decade, you're going to have ice-free North, which is going to allow oil exploration, natural gas exploration. There are already countries standing in line, Russia, the US, Scandinavian countries, who are all lining up to claim sovereignty over this part of Canada.
So your question would be?
This is federal jurisdiction, and I want to know what each party is going to do to establish sovereignty and to maintain it. And if it requires a military presence, are you...
Sovereignty in the North?
Yeah.
Are we ready to go with military?
Yes, are you willing to go with
Beginning with Michelle, talking to sovereignty in the North.
Honestly, I can't speak for my party in terms of establishing a military presence to defend our North. I would hope if it came to that we would, because I think we need to protect our sovereignty rights. When it was only ice and snow and a few people living up there, nobody cared about it. It was Canada's. But now you're right. Now that it's possibly ripe over the next decades for resource exploration, we do have people lining up. And I know that the Harper government had started some work in that area. I would need to do some more research to give you a better answer to the question, but I personally think we need to keep Canada whole, and we need to make sure that the US and Russia in particular don't take over our land.
In my introduction, I told you guys that the People's Party of Canada is looking to protect its sovereignty because we did not want outside forces dictating policies that were unelected that we have to succumb to. I'm looking to keep Canada north, strong, and free. We have some of the best trained soldiers in the world. And if they want to come and take us on our turf, so be it. But we are part of NATO. We do have many allies out there. The fact of having somebody like the U.S. come in to take over that, I find that hard to believe. There are some other countries that might try to invade, but as it stands right now, we do have the protection of our allies. We have very strong ties to Britain. We are the U.S.'s biggest trading partner, but I am looking to keep Canadian policies sovereign to make sure places like that are protected, and we will not bend the knee to the globalist agenda.
Okay, thank you, John, for your question. Again, I've read our policy, and specific to your question, I haven't found that information, but however, if I am given the opportunity to represent Dufferin-Caledon in Ottawa, I will definitely fight for the sovereignty of our north. Thank you.
I had mentioned earlier on that the climate crisis, the warming of our planets, will have severe geopolitical consequences. I talked about migration, I talked about half countries being flooded, and now we're talking about the Arctic melting and making it vulnerable to climate change. Clearly, this is an issue of a proportion that eventually a foreign nation will invade Canada to get our resources that at this stage no party has a plan for. It's such a ginormous threat that no party has a platform for it, as proven today. I'm not bashing any of my colleagues here on the table. No single political party has a proper answer, John, to your question.
Kind of the time that just one gentleman I'm not going to turn away. If you would like to ask a question. Thank you for your understanding.
I'll try to be short and three things. My question is about our immigration policy. I'm a product of immigration policy of Canada. My question to all of you is that there is a known fact. Citizens want death ratio is declining in Western world. Senior population is growing. How we are going to? What's your take about immigration policy and foreigners coming to Canada through proper channels?
Great, starting with Chad.
So as you guys know, I'm looking to lower the immigration policy to fall in line with the other G7 countries, right? As it currently stands, Andrew Scheer and the Liberals want to raise that up to 350,000. Only about 50% of those are economic. So we'll only be looking close to about 120 to 150 economic immigrants coming in through the current system. My mom is a product of the immigration. My in-laws sitting right there are a product of the immigration. They came over and they sacrificed in order to make this country a lot better. Whenever it comes to illegal immigrants, currently we have 28,000 illegal immigrants coming through at a cost of close to $400 million to the Canadian taxpayer. Even Justin Trudeau, and I got to say during the French debate, it was nice for him to say, he's looking to stop the Roxham Road exit to stop these people from jumping the lines. We get a lot of slack for wanting to lower immigration. And one of the things you touched on is, well, Canadians aren't having enough babies and there's an older population. Sometimes they're not having enough babies because they can't afford it. How many people know a 25, 26-year-old that's living in their parents' basement still? A lot. They can't afford to go out and start their families. So what I'm looking to do is make it cheaper for Canadians to get into the housing market, to give Canadians back their money so they can start a life. I was 25 whenever I got my first house and started my family here in Bolton, and I'm a rarity. And that was 13 years ago, and it's getting harder and harder and harder. I think Canadians not having family has nothing to do with immigration. I think it has to do with the money in their pocket.
Immigration, specifically bringing in family members and so on.
Yeah, so we would continue with immigration policy. I am a product of that. I came here in the 70s. Yeah, our position is that we would maintain our immigration policies. Yeah.
It's a twofold question. One, there's immigration, the other one's refugees. Let me address immigration first, and finally I can wholeheartedly disagree with Chad. There's a lot of statistics you throw around which are quite homemade, I would say. If you look at Canada, our reproduction rate is 1.68 per woman, and the rate to maintain a level of population is 2.05. And it is a lifestyle choice. You hear these things, double income, no kids. It's for most people a lifestyle choice to not have children. And here, I eventually agree with you, we shall stay out of people's bedrooms. They can do whatever they plan for their family, that's totally fair. But as a society, we need to stay at a level that the population of our country grows. As of right now, we are 37.4 million Canadians, which is absolutely good news because it fuels the economy. Immigrants have exactly the same level of home ownership as real Canadians. So all the myth about immigrants coming here just to go on welfare are statistically completely proven wrong. Now let's talk about refugees. Sweden has taken, a country of 5 million people, has taken over 300,000 refugees. Germany has taken 1 million refugees in 1 year. Because what are you doing? Here is somebody who's afraid for their life. Here's maybe somebody afraid for their freedom. Here's somebody prosecuted for their sexual orientation. And you see how this list is going? As Canadians, and I have been talking about Canadian leadership, are we slamming the door in face of refugees? That's not my Canada.
So we'll go from Stefan to Michelle. So Michelle, the question was about immigration and specifically bringing in family members, refugees, etc.
The Liberals, as always, are going to be welcoming and inclusive when it comes to immigrants and refugees. In terms of immigration, I sat down with the immigration minister and he talked to me about the shortage that we are going to have in skilled trades workers. If we don't have immigrants come to our country, our economy is going to sink. Now, of course, those immigrants don't just come themselves. When Chad talks about an economic immigrant, that might be the person who comes here as the skilled worker. They, of course, bring their family. They're not going to stay if they can't bring their family. But those family members also become contributing Canadians. They get jobs, they spend money, there are neighbors, there are friends. And I am wholeheartedly for our immigration policy. In terms of refugees, so first of all, there's no such thing as an illegal immigrant, it's a refugee. And refugees come into our country in two ways. So first, they can be processed overseas, like we saw with the Syrian population. But the second thing is somebody can make it to one of our borders and come across. They might still face the same desperate circumstances. I knew somebody who flew over from Africa. Her story was so horrible, I couldn't even repeat it to you here tonight. That she fled for her life and her safety. Absolutely, she had no choice. She was brought over by somebody who ditched her in a bus shelter in February, wearing only her African clothes and not knowing English. So, you know, by definition, she would be one of these supposed queue jumpers. There is no queue. She went through the refugee tribunal process and she was declared a genuine refugee. People who aren't declared genuine refugees, they get shipped back home. Thank you.
Beginning with Stefan, 3 minutes for your closing remarks.
Let me try this first without a mic. Can everybody hear me well? Some can, some can't. Yeah, that should work. I brought a chart. Unfortunately, we didn't talk enough about the climate crisis, but it seemed like everybody has the same ideas. Everybody wants to ban single-use plastics. Everybody's concerned about warming this, warming that. Everybody has the climate crisis as a talking point. And so many topics, we were all in agreement. And Chad, I apologize for going harder at you. I know you can take it, you're a fighter, by your own admission. But there was so much consensus. So you have to look behind the platforms. You have to look behind what all the parties want. And as you can imagine, the climate crisis is the #1 issue for the Green Party. Here are all these wonderful party platforms you see here. From today, the effect of the party platforms, if implemented, lowering our emission targets by 2030. And 2030 is a critical year. Only the Green Party, and obviously this is the green line, and here's our target. Only the Green Party has a plan that brings us in line with the target. And we all know we're humans, we're all weak. Sometimes you set your targets very ambitious and you don't reach them. We even have at the Green Party some built-in leeway if you're over-ambitious still to hit the target. Only the Green Party has a platform, a program, and a plan to hit our climate crisis or emission reduction targets. Now you might wonder, has my graphic designer made this chart? No, it's made by the CBC, and the CBC is absolutely not a fan of the Green Party. So it's a very, very objective statistic when the CBC debunked all the platforms on their credibility on the climate crisis. Furthermore, as I said, so many consensus here on the table. What makes it really different? What is the difference between us parties? And I put this up again. We are really principled. This is our Vision Green. Have I mentioned it since 1996 in the works? That is your roadmap, that's your platform. Speaking of platforms, the two main parties, the Liberals and the Conservatives, both have released their platforms after the writs have been issued. Did they not know that we have an election on October 21st? Because their strategic advisors told them, oh, this is how voters think, let's make a platform to catch as many votes as possible. That's not principled politics, and Greens stand for principled politics. So I believe that as your Green candidate, that I have the professional experience, the integrity, and the party platform to be your representative for Dufferin-Caledon on October 21st. Vote with your heart. Science has your back. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to run as the NDP candidate for Dufferin-Caledon. 1 minute I was sitting at work on my desk, and then 1 minute I'm up here with these amazing people. This is not going to be very long. What I bring is a unique sense of optimism and willingness to break down silos. Respectful communication, open-mindedness, flexibility, and a collaborative spirit. I will admit when I'm wrong and that I don't know the answer to something, but I will take the time to reflect on how to make situations better for all. And most of all, I will get back to you because I'm in it for you. Parce que on se bat pour vous. Merci. Thank you.
A common theme that's been happening to me throughout these debates and this election is, you're such a nice guy. Why are you running for the People's Party of Canada? And then I'll turn and I'll ask them, have you read the platform? Well, no. Don't believe everything you guys see in it. Don't. Educate yourselves. But nice guys actually running for it, maybe we're all kind of nice. Just get to know us a little bit. I've been attacked on Facebook because it's very easy to do, and a lot of people like to go after the low-hanging fruit. But that's okay. I got big shoulders, and I'll carry the weight if I have to for the rest of the meeting. As this is the last debate, I want to thank all the other candidates for the mutual respect that they've shown me and my party, as that's not happening in some other ridings. Dufferin-Caledon is a prime example of how politics should be done in this country. And you guys should be very, very proud of your work. To my wife and to my kids, you guys are my rock. I know the sacrifices that you guys have made wasn't easy, and it might be hard for you guys to understand right now why I'm doing this. I did this for you. I truly believe that our core policies of the People's Party will make Canada better. It's going to leave you with the freedom to soar above all the rest without being restricted by government. I'm not looking to limit your potential, and I want to see you kids fulfill your full potential. There's no limits from a government. To my supporters, on October 21st, we're going to show the country that whenever a globalist agenda came to Canada, we did not back down. Whenever governments thought they knew what to do with their money better than its own citizens, we said no. We are the North, we are strong, we're free, and above all else, we're Canadian.
Thank you all for coming here tonight and for your questions and for listening to the answers with a very open mind. This is the 5th time we have all come together on a stage in the course of this campaign, and I would say we've gotten to know each other. We've gone from complete strangers in most cases to getting to know one another a little bit well. So I want to do something a bit different. I want to say a few of the things that I have found really remarkable about my fellow candidates. Stefan, I love your sense of humor. You have a passion for the environment, but of course we expect that from a Green Party candidate. One of the things that I really value that you bring to the table is your international worldview and your interesting take on certain issues. Allison, you have displayed such a quiet courage throughout this campaign. Allison was, I think, the last candidate into the race. She came with hardly any time to prepare, to get up to speed, to start canvassing early, to do some of the things that the rest of us have had to do. And you have faced everything with an honesty, with a fortitude, and with respect for people from all sorts of walks of life and different cultures. And I really appreciate that. Chad? You sing the national anthem better than anybody else. Chad has a remarkable plaque. I really love your spirit, and I really love how clear you are in what you say. And I love also that you have the strength to disagree with your leader, Maxime Bernier, on key issues like climate change and on diversity and his wanting to repeal the Multiculturalism Act. I also really have come to respect that Chad fights for the little guy, that he has a real understanding of people who are living in poverty, who are working really hard for every single thing that they have. I have a few words for Kyle in his absence. Kyle, I think amongst us candidates, he's extremely quick-minded and articulate and intelligent. He's experienced, it's not his first rodeo, and that shows. And he comes to these debates, well, he didn't come tonight, but usually he comes and he doesn't have any notes, everything is in his head. And when I take a look at what Andrew Scheer has done, he's run one of the most despicable campaigns I have seen with so much disinformation and lies, and Kyle has resisted that. My final note is that I say that it's time for us to have a progressive candidate. I would love to be that progressive candidate to unite all of us together. I will be a strong member of Parliament for everybody, and I really look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Thank you again for your attendance and participation. You made my job really easy with your respectful questions. If you didn't have time to address a particular issue tonight, stick around. Some of the candidates will be hanging around afterwards. This was a long, exhausting election cycle. We just came off a long weekend, and the candidates were working really hard out there this weekend and still came by to answer your questions and be in the hot seat. Once again, let's give them another round of applause.
What a great evening. Choice is going to be top for that deciding voters for the people who came here to answer questions. And then just one final note, we are all volunteer organizations with no money, and no one can throw in money or any other Canadian currency. We have a volunteer, we would be much appreciated. Thank you.